Machiavelli wrote The Prince to teach rulers how to gain and keep power. But here's what most people miss. Every rule he wrote about acquiring kingdoms applies directly to acquiring wealth, because money is just modern power, and power follows eternal laws. When Machiavelli said, "It is better to be feared than loved," he wasn't talking about cruelty, he was talking about leverage. When he said, "The ends justify the means," he wasn't advocating immorality, he was teaching effectiveness. When he said, "Never show your hand," he wasn't promoting deception, he was teaching strategic advantage. The principles in The Prince weren't written for kings anymore. They were written for you. Because in the modern world, you don't conquer territories, you build businesses, you don't command armies, you control capital, you don't rule subjects, you master markets. Same game, different field, same rules. Think about it. Machiavelli taught that power goes to those who understand its mechanics, not those who deserve it morally. Is that not exactly how wealth works? Money flows to those who understand leverage, positioning, and control, not to those who work the hardest or have the best intentions. He taught that appearances matter more than reality. Is that not how the economy operates? People with the appearance of wealth attract more wealth. Businesses with the perception of value command higher prices. The market responds to what things seem to be, not what they actually are. He taught that you must be willing to do what others won't. Is that not the definition of competitive advantage? While everyone else follows conventional wisdom, plays it safe, and stays comfortable, those who break from the herd and embrace uncomfortable truths are the ones who win. For 5 centuries, people have read The Prince and thought it was about politics. But it was never just about politics. It was about power. And power in every era, in every system, operates by the same fundamental laws. The wealthy know this. That's why they study Machiavelli. That's why his book has never stopped being relevant. That's why the principles he documented still work. What I'm about to reveal are the 7 core rules from The Prince, translated directly into modern wealth strategy. Not interpreted, not softened. The actual Machiavellian approach to money, power, and building the life you want, regardless of where you start or who approves. This isn't motivation. This is pure Machiavelli applied to your bank account. Here's the first Machiavellian rule applied to money. It is better to be feared than loved. Or in modern terms, leverage beats likability. Machiavelli wrote this for princes managing subjects, but it applies perfectly to you managing your economic position. He wasn't saying be cruel, he was saying that respect based on capability matters more than affection based on personality. People who like you might help you when it's convenient. People who respect your competence will pay you regardless of how they feel. Think about it. The wealthy don't build their fortunes by being liked. They build them by being valuable, sometimes unavoidable, and always in control of something others need. They have leverage. And leverage is modern fear. Not terror, but the knowledge that you have options and others need what you control. Here's how this plays out. 2 people start businesses. Person A tries to be everyone's friend. Low prices to be liked. Flexible terms to be accommodating. Always available to be helpful. Person B focuses on being excellent, scarce, and in demand. Premium prices. Clear boundaries. Strategic availability. 5 years later, Person A is exhausted, undervalued, and barely profitable. Person B is wealthy, respected, and has clients competing for their time. The difference? Person A optimized for being loved. Person B optimized for being valued. And value, not affection, is what the market rewards. Machiavelli understood this about power, and it translates directly to money. When you control something scarce, when you deliver results others can't, when you position yourself as the solution, not the supplicant, people respect your position. They might not love you for charging premium rates or maintaining boundaries, but they'll pay you. And payment, not popularity, builds wealth. This is why most people stay broke. They optimize for being liked. They undercharge to be nice. They over-deliver to be appreciated. They say yes to everything to be helpful. And they end up valuable to everyone but profitable to no one. Their likability doesn't translate to leverage, and without leverage, there's no wealth. So what's the Machiavellian alternative? Build something people need more than they need to like you. Develop skills that command respect regardless of personality. Create scarcity around your time and expertise. Position yourself as the prize, not the pursuer. Stop trying to be everyone's friend and start being someone whose capabilities can't be ignored. It is better to be respected for what you control than loved for who you are. Machiavelli knew it, the wealthy apply it, and now you do too. But leverage alone isn't enough if you're not willing to use it. Here's the second Machiavellian rule. The ends justify the means, or in modern terms, results matter more than methods. This is Machiavelli's most controversial statement, and it's completely misunderstood. He wasn't saying, do whatever evil thing you want. He was saying that history judges outcomes, not intentions. A prince who maintains peace through decisive action is remembered as great, even if the action was harsh. A prince who means well but creates chaos is remembered as weak, even if his intentions were pure. Applied to wealth, the market doesn't care about your process. It cares about your results. You can work incredibly hard using the right methods and stay broke. Or you can focus ruthlessly on outcomes and build wealth. The market rewards the second person, not the first. Here's how most people fail this principle. They follow conventional methods because those methods feel morally safe. They get a degree because that's the right path. They work a job because that's the responsible choice. They save in a bank account because that's the smart thing. And they stay broke, not because they're bad people, but because they prioritized method over result. Meanwhile, others focus entirely on the outcome. They want wealth, so they reverse engineer the fastest path. Is it starting a business? They start one. Is it learning a high-income skill? They learn it. Is it taking on calculated debt to buy assets? They do it. They don't care if the path is unconventional. They care if it works. Think about the most successful entrepreneurs. Did they follow traditional career paths? Did they do things the right way? Or did they identify an outcome they wanted and pursued it through whatever method actually worked, even if that method looked strange, uncomfortable, or risky to others? Machiavelli's point is this: if your goal is wealth, then every decision should be evaluated by whether it moves you towards that outcome. Not whether it's conventional, not whether people approve, not whether it feels comfortable, but whether it works. This is why people with good intentions often stay poor, while people with clear focus get rich. The first group optimizes for doing things the right way. The second group optimizes for achieving the right outcome. And outcomes, not methods, determine your financial reality. And this is the trap. Society teaches you to value process over results, to follow the proper path even if it leads nowhere, to be a good person who does things correctly rather than an effective person who achieves outcomes. And that programming keeps you broke, because the universe doesn't reward good process, it rewards effective results. So what's the Machiavellian shift? Define your outcome clearly, then work backward to determine what actually achieves it. Ignore conventional methods that don't work. Embrace unconventional methods that do. Focus relentlessly on results and let the moralists worry about whether you took the right path. The ends justify the means, not because ethics don't matter, but because if your end is wealth and your means don't produce it, you failed. Machiavelli understood this about power. The same law applies to money, but even effective action needs protection from exposure. Here's the third Machiavellian rule: never show your hand. Or in modern terms, strategic secrecy is competitive advantage. Machiavelli advised princes to keep their plans hidden until execution, not because secrecy is inherently good, but because revealed intentions invite opposition. Once people know what you're planning, they can prepare against you, copy you, or sabotage you. Secrecy is protection. In wealth building, this principle is critical. The moment you announce your plans, you create problems. Family questions your decisions, friends doubt your methods, competitors steal your ideas, critics undermine your confidence, and you spend more energy defending your plans than executing them. Here's how this plays out. Two people decide to start businesses. Person A announces it to everyone, posts about it on social media, tells family and friends, seeks validation and encouragement. Person B tells no one, works in silence, executes without fanfare. 6 months later, Person A's business idea has been criticized into paralysis. Person B's business is operational and profitable. The difference? Person A showed their hand. They invited input, doubt, and interference. Person B kept their plans private until they had results to show, and results are much harder to argue with than plans. Machiavelli understood that power moves work best when they're unexpected. The same applies to wealth. When you acquire an asset silently, no one competes for it. When you develop a skill privately, no one can discourage you. When you build income streams without announcement, no one can sabotage or copy them until you're already established. This is why the truly wealthy operate quietly. They don't announce their investments. They don't broadcast their strategies. They don't explain their methods. They move in silence, build in private, and reveal only results. By the time anyone realizes what they've done, it's too late to interfere. Most people do the opposite. They announce every plan, seeking approval and validation. And what happens? People talk them out of ideas, inject doubt, offer realistic advice that translates to "don't try." And the plan dies before execution, not because it was bad, but because it was exposed before it was protected. And this is the mechanism. When you show your hand, you give others power over your decisions. Their opinions become your obstacles. Their doubts become your hesitations. Their limitations become your barriers. But when you keep your plans private, you protect them. You maintain full agency. You execute without interference. So what's the Machiavellian approach? Decide in private. Execute in silence. Announce only after success. Don't seek permission. Don't ask for opinions. Don't broadcast your moves. Work quietly, build steadily, and reveal only when you're in a position of strength. The wealthy don't hide because they're ashamed. They hide because they're strategic. They understand that every plan revealed is a plan vulnerable, and vulnerability is not a path to power. Never show your hand. Keep your plans private. Build in silence. Machiavelli wrote this for princes defending kingdoms. It applies perfectly to you building wealth. But secrecy without action is just hiding. The next rule is about taking the move. Here's the fourth Machiavellian rule. Fortune favors the bold, or in modern terms, calculated risk beats safe inaction. Machiavelli wrote that fortune is like a river. It floods and destroys when unchecked. But those who build defenses and channels in advance can harness its power. He believed that passive people get swept away by circumstances, while active people shape circumstances to their advantage. Boldness, not caution, is the ally of success. Applied to wealth, playing it safe guarantees mediocrity. Taking calculated risks creates the possibility of exceptional outcomes. The market doesn't reward those who avoid risk. It rewards those who take risk intelligently. Here's the pattern most people follow. They see an opportunity, they analyze it, they see the risks, they get scared, they do nothing. Years later, they watch someone else execute the exact opportunity they considered and become wealthy from it. And they tell themselves, "I thought of that too." But thinking doesn't pay. Action does. Now contrast that with how the wealthy operate. They see an opportunity, they analyze the risks, they calculate the potential. If the upside outweighs the downside, they move. Even if it's uncomfortable, even if success isn't guaranteed, even if others think they're crazy. They understand that the biggest risk is not taking any risks at all. Machiavelli observed that princes who hesitated lost their kingdoms, while those who acted decisively, even if their actions weren't perfect, often won. The same applies to money. Those who wait for perfect conditions never start. Those who need guaranteed outcomes never build wealth. Those who play it safe end up serving those who didn't. Think about every major wealth-building move. Starting a business, investing in assets, learning high-value skills, relocating for opportunity. Every single one involves risk. Every single one could fail. And every single one is how people actually get rich. There is no safe path to wealth. There is only calculated risk executed with intelligence. This is why people with stable jobs and conventional lives rarely build significant wealth. Not because they're not smart, but because they're not bold. They optimize for safety, and safety doesn't compound. Risk, when managed well, does. And this is the trap. Society teaches you that boldness is reckless, that safety is wisdom, that you should avoid risk at all costs, and that conditioning keeps you exactly where you are, because wealth is on the other side of calculated risk, and you've been taught never to cross that line. So what's the Machiavellian mindset? Understand that risk is not the enemy. Unmanaged risk is. Calculate your downside. If you can survive the worst case, and the upside is significant, take the move. Stop waiting for perfect conditions. Stop needing guarantees. Start building while others are still planning. Fortune favors the bold. Not the reckless, the bold. Those who see opportunity calculate intelligently and act decisively. Machiavelli knew it. The wealthy live it. And now it's your principle too. But boldness without perception management is just exposure. The next rule is about controlling how you're seen. Here's the fifth Machiavellian rule. Control perception, control reality, or in modern terms, how you're seen determines your value. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must not only be powerful, but must appear powerful. Because perception shapes behavior. If subjects believe their prince is strong, they obey. If they believe he's weak, they rebel. Reality matters, but perception matters more, because people act based on what they perceive, not what's objectively true. Applied to wealth, the market doesn't pay you based on your actual value. It pays you based on your perceived value. Two people with identical skills can earn vastly different amounts because one understands perception management and the other doesn't. Here's how this works. Person A is highly skilled but presents themselves poorly. Generic website, inconsistent branding, unclear messaging, low confidence in conversations. They're excellent at their work, but nobody knows it. Person B is equally skilled but presents strategically. Professional presence, clear positioning, confident communication, strong social proof. They're equally excellent, but everyone perceives them as premium. 6 months later, Person A is undercharging and struggling to find clients. Person B is commanding high rates and turning opportunities away. Same skills, different outcomes. Why? Perception. Machiavelli understood this about power. The perception of strength is often more valuable than strength itself. And the same applies to money. The perception of value is often more profitable than value itself, because people buy based on how they perceive worth, not on some objective measure of it. This is why branding matters, why presentation matters, why confidence matters. Not because these things create value, but because they communicate value. And communicated value is what the market rewards. Think about premium brands. Are they actually 10 times better than budget alternatives? Rarely. But they're perceived as 10 times better, so they command 10 times prices. That's not deception, that's understanding how markets work. People don't buy products, they buy their perception of products. And whoever controls that perception controls the price. This is also why the wealthy invest in appearance. Nice clothes, professional environments, high-quality materials. Not because they're superficial, but because they understand that these things signal value, and signaled value attracts opportunity. The person in a tailored suit gets treated differently than the person in a hoodie, regardless of who has more money. And this is the mechanism most people miss. They believe that if they're good enough, people will recognize it. But that's not how humans work. Humans rely on shortcuts, signals, appearances. If you don't control those signals, you don't control your perceived value. And if you don't control your perceived value, you don't control your income. So what's the Machiavellian strategy? Master the art of presentation. Invest in how you're seen. Control your narrative. Position yourself strategically. Build social proof. Communicate value clearly and consistently. Not to deceive, but to ensure that your actual value is perceived accurately. Control perception, and you control reality. Machiavelli taught this to princes. It applies perfectly to anyone building wealth, because the world responds not to who you are, but to who you appear to be. But even the best perception can't save you if you're positioned poorly. The next rule is about strength through structure. Here's the sixth Machiavellian rule. Weakness invites attack. Or in modern terms, financial vulnerability attracts exploitation. Machiavelli warned princes that appearing weak invites enemies to invade, not because enemies are inherently evil, but because weakness creates opportunity. And in competitive environments, opportunity is always exploited. Strength, on the other hand, deters aggression. People don't attack what might destroy them. Applied to wealth, when you're financially weak, broke, desperate, in debt, without options, you get exploited. Not always maliciously, but systematically. Landlords raise rent because you can't leave. Employers offer low pay because you need the job. Creditors charge high interest because you have no leverage. Weakness doesn't generate sympathy. It generates predation. Here's how this plays out in real life. Person A has no savings, lives paycheck to paycheck, and carries debt. They need to keep their job no matter what. Their employer knows this, so they're denied raises, overworked, and undervalued. They can't leave because they can't afford a gap in income. They're trapped by their weakness. Person B has 6 months of savings, no debt, and multiple income streams. Their employer knows they have options, so they get raises proactively, better treatment, and more respect. And when negotiations fail, they can walk away without desperation. Their strength creates leverage. Same labor market, same skills, different outcomes. Why? Weakness invites exploitation. Strength commands respect. Machiavelli understood this about power. Weak positions attract aggression. And the same applies to money. Financial weakness is a signal to the market that you're exploitable. Banks offer you worse terms. Businesses charge you more because you can't negotiate. Opportunities pass you by because you can't move on them. This is why building a position of strength is critical. Not luxury. Strength, emergency funds, no consumer debt, multiple income streams, skills that make you employable elsewhere. These aren't just financial safety nets, they're strategic positions that change how the world treats you. Think about negotiations. When you're desperate, you accept terrible terms. When you have options, you command good ones. Same negotiation, different leverage. And leverage is just another word for strength. The strong can afford to say no. The weak can't. And that difference determines everything. This is also why the wealthy obsess over maintaining strong positions. They don't overextend. They keep liquidity. They diversify income. They avoid vulnerability. Not because they're paranoid, but because they understand that weakness, once visible, will be exploited. And this is the brutal reality. The world is competitive. When you're weak, people who need wins will take them from you. Not because they hate you, but because that's how competitive systems work. Strength protects, weakness exposes. So what's the Machiavellian principle? Build strength before you need it. Eliminate debt, create savings, diversify income, develop skills. Position yourself so that you have options, always. Because options are power, and power is protection. Weakness invites attack. Strength deters it. Machiavelli wrote this for kingdoms under siege. It applies perfectly to individuals navigating the economy. Build strength, maintain leverage, and never position yourself where desperation makes you exploitable. But strength alone doesn't teach you who to trust. The final rule is about strategic relationships. Here's the seventh and final Machiavellian rule. Keep your enemies close. Or in modern terms, understand competition intimately. This is one of Machiavelli's most famous statements, and like most of his wisdom, it's misunderstood. He didn't mean be friends with people who hate you. He meant understand those who compete with you. Study them, watch them, learn from them. Because ignorance of your competition is how you lose. Applied to wealth, your competition isn't your enemy in the emotional sense, but they are your opposition in the market. They're competing for the same clients, the same opportunities, the same capital, and if you don't understand them, they'll outmaneuver you without you realizing what happened. Here's how this principle works in practice. Two businesses offer similar services. Business A ignores competitors, focuses internally, assumes they'll win through hard work alone. Business B studies competitors obsessively, what they charge, how they position, what they offer, where they're weak. Business A keeps losing deals and doesn't know why. Business B knows exactly where they have advantage and exploits it. The difference: Business B kept their enemies close, they understood the competitive landscape, they knew where they were strong and where others were vulnerable. And that knowledge is power. Machiavelli taught princes to keep potential threats nearby where they could be monitored. The same applies to business and wealth. You don't ignore competition, you study it. You learn what they're doing right. You identify what they're doing wrong. You find gaps they're not filling, and you position yourself accordingly. This is also why the wealthy network with other wealthy people, not just for friendship, for intelligence. They learn what's working. They see opportunities early. They understand market movements before the general public. They keep their competition close enough to learn from them without being crushed by them. Think about every successful company. Do they ignore competitors? Number. They study them relentlessly. They know their competitors' pricing, positioning, weaknesses, and strengths. They use that knowledge to compete more effectively. That's not paranoia, that's strategy. And this is what most people get wrong. They either ignore competition entirely, thinking it doesn't matter, or they fear it so much they hide from it. Both approaches fail. The Machiavellian approach is different. Acknowledge competition, study it, learn from it, and use that knowledge to position yourself better. Your competition isn't trying to destroy you out of malice. They're just trying to win. And in a competitive market, someone's going to win and someone's going to lose. The question is, will you understand the game well enough to win? Or will you ignore the competition and wonder why you keep losing? So what's the Machiavellian application? Identify who competes for the same opportunities you want. Study them. Learn what they do well. Find where they're weak. Use that knowledge to position yourself more effectively. Don't hate them. Don't fear them. Just understand them better than they understand you. Keep your enemies close, not to befriend them, but to outmaneuver them. Machiavelli taught this for political survival. It applies perfectly to economic competition. Know your landscape, understand your opposition, and use that knowledge as the strategic advantage it is. Now that you've seen all 7 rules, let's talk about what this means for your wealth. By now, you understand the Machiavellian framework. 7 rules written for princes 5 centuries ago, perfectly applicable to building wealth today. Because power follows eternal laws, and money is just modern power. Imagine waking up 6 months from now. You've applied these principles. You've built leverage, not likability. You've focused on results, not methods. You've moved in silence and announced in success. You've taken calculated risks while others stayed safe. You've controlled perception and communicated value. You've built strength that deters exploitation. You've studied your competition and positioned strategically. While everyone else is still following conventional advice, working hard, playing it safe, seeking approval, avoiding risk, ignoring competition, you'll be operating from a completely different playbook. The Machiavellian playbook, the one that actually works. You're no longer playing the game they taught you in school. You're playing the game the wealthy have always played, the one Machiavelli documented, the one that operates by laws of power and positioning rather than fairness and effort. And that shift changes everything. This is when you stop being a subject and start being a prince. Not royalty, but someone who understands power and uses it. Someone who sees the world as it actually is, not as they wish it were. Someone who builds wealth through strategy, not hope. The Machiavellian path is not for everyone. It requires seeing uncomfortable truths. It requires acting when others won't. It requires intelligence, discipline, and the willingness to be misunderstood. But for those who walk it, the rewards are extraordinary. The rules haven't changed in 500 years, and now they're yours. So remember this: Machiavelli didn't write The Prince to make you comfortable. He wrote it to make you effective. Every rule in that book is a tool, and tools aren't moral or immoral. They're useful or useless. The world operates by laws of power. You can pretend those laws don't exist and struggle your entire life wondering why effort doesn't equal outcome. Or you can learn those laws, apply them intelligently, and build the wealth and freedom you actually want. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Every day you operate by conventional rules is another day you give away your power. Pick one Machiavellian principle from this video. Apply it this week. See what happens when you stop being who they taught you to be and start being who the game actually rewards. As Machiavelli himself wrote in The Prince, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." In modern terms, it is better to be wealthy and misunderstood than broke and beloved. The choice has always been yours. The rules have been written. Now execute.